Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Animas Corporation, providing insulin delivery products for people living with diabetes and part of the One Touch family. And by Dexcom. Take control of your diabetes with the world's first continuous glucose monitoring system that sends glucose readings directly to your compatible smart device. Live life on your own terms with Dexcom. Hi, it's Stacy. This podcast is not intended as medical advice. If you have those kinds of questions, please contact your healthcare provider.
This is Diabetes Connections with Stacy Sims.
This week, author Stacy Juba was a longtime health reporter and for that job received many publications, including a children's book about type 1 diabetes. She put it away and didn't think about it again until her daughter was diagnosed years later.
When she did get diagnosed, after we were home for a few days, it just popped into my head that I had this book, and I took it. I went and I found it, and I was kind of staring at it, and then I almost took out all my anger on this book. Like, I was like, oh, this was bad luck, and I had scissors in my hand. I was almost going to just cut it up, take out all my frustration on this book, but then something held me back.
She kept that book and moved forward. We'll talk about Stacy's experience with type 1 in her family, as well as her writing career. She has quite a following and a popular set of books. Plus, in our community connection, have you heard about Noah's March? A Florida family is advocating and raising money for type 1 by walking across the country. It was their 10-year-old son's idea.
It's certifiably insane. So at this point, right now, it's no support vehicle. It's me, Noah, and a stroller, and the goodness and the, just blind faith that we live in a great country and people are going to help.
So far, people are helping, and we'll let you know what the family needs. Plus, a big FDA approval to tell you about and a change in the pump industry. It all starts now on Diabetes Connections. Welcome to another week of Diabetes Connections. I'm Stacy Sims. Lots to talk about today. We are going to dive right in. But first, if you're new to the show, hey, great to have you along. So glad you found us. Here on Diabetes Connections, I try to educate and inspire by sharing stories of connection from famous people with type 1 diabetes, technology companies giving us updates, and by sharing stories of, everyday people who are just trying to live day to day and manage diabetes. I'm a longtime broadcaster, local radio and television. My son has type 1. He was diagnosed 10 years ago, right before he turned 2. He just turned 12. Wow. And put them both together and you get this podcast. One thing I'm going to ask you to do right off the bat is if you're listening on a podcast app of any kind, Stitcher or iTunes, on your phone, please go ahead and subscribe to that podcast app. It really helps us. It helps other people find us, believe it or not, the way some of these podcast apps work. And it'll make it really easy for you to get the episode as soon as it uploads every week. If you're listening on Facebook or on the website, that's fantastic. Go ahead and share that with somebody that you know who is touched by diabetes. So the FDA news keeps coming fast and furious, or at least as fast as it is for the FDA. And I should be clear, this was actually not so much an FDA approval, but a follow-up on one. So the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, which is often referred to as CMS, has announced that it'll basically cover Dexcom's G5 CGM system. So what they've done here is they've determined a benefit category and coverage for CGM. In order to be included in this category, the system must be defined as therapeutic. So that means that you can dose, you can make treatment decisions. And that's why it was so important to get that FDA approval for insulin dosing that we talked about for Dexcom last month. So I am going to link up more information at diabetes-connections.com. And it really is, it's a huge move when you think about coverage for older people who will certainly now have access. And they wouldn't, imagine you're 60 and you start using a CGM, you turn 65, you get Medicare, and then you can't use your Dexcom any longer. So that hopefully will not happen. I'm sure there are lots of ins and outs to this. And again, I'll hook it up at diabetes-connections.com. But we've been hearing about this for a couple of years now. Very interesting. And by the way, Medtronic CGM, as of this taping, has not received FDA approval for dosing, so it can't be covered by Medicare under this announcement. The other bit of news I wanted to share was from Roche Diabetes Care. They make the AccuCheck brand pump, and as reported by Diabetes Mine, they are no longer going to sell it in the U.S., at least for now. There wasn't a big announcement. This was something that Diabetes Mind checked out after they heard from one of their readers. It's not clear whether it's a permanent decision, if they're start selling them again in the U.S. at some point. I don't think I know anybody who uses this pump, but at the same time, less choice is not great for anybody. And so this is the AccuCheck brand insulin pump from Roche, and they are not selling it in the United States as of the end of 2016. I will link up more information from Diabetes Mine at diabetes-connections.com, and you can read their really good report about this. Okay, quick word from our sponsor, from Animas, and I love working with Animas, and after nearly 10 years, I love Benny's Animas insulin pump. I met a lot of you recently at Riding on Insulin, great event that we went to up in Virginia, and at the JDRF statewide retreat in South Carolina in Greenville this past weekend, and it was great to hear why so many of you love the Animas experience as well. They offer a choice of insulin pumps, so you can choose the one that's right for you or for your child, and with kids, it's great that the Animas pumps really fit an active life. I love talking about our experience with Animas. They make it easy with great products and incredible customer service. To find out more about Animas, just go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Animas, part of the One Touch family logo. A couple of weeks ago, we talked to Erin Spinetto, the author of Adventure On, Adventure More, Worry Less, and Watch Your Diabetes Motivation Soar. And she offered a contest to win an autographed, personalized copy of Adventure On. And I am thrilled to announce the winner. Congratulations to Eileen Paste. You've won a copy of Adventure On. I'll contact you and get in touch so that Erin can send you that book. And thanks so much for everybody who entered. We'll be doing more contests like that. It's always fun to be able to give stuff away. And I asked you all to comment about what your adventure about diabetes would be in the new year. And Eileen wrote, I'll be adventuring on by doing plenty of backpacking in 2017, also considering another half marathon. I'm listening to the podcast right now. So thank you so much for listening. And as I said, the book will be on the way to you, Eileen. And this was a social media contest on Facebook, winner chosen at random. Hey, I also want to let you know that Diabetes Podcast Week is coming. D Podcast Week is where we did this last year. I got all of the podcasters I could find doing something on type 1 diabetes, and we all got together for 1 week to help benefit the Spare a Rose campaign. Spare a Rose helps children in the developing world with type 1 by getting them much-needed supplies, insulin, test strips, the basics that these kids need to stay alive. And donations, even a small donation, goes so far with this group. So I will link that up again. It's coming February 6th, really fast. And in addition to Diabetes Connections, you can listen to a whole bunch of other diabetes podcasts and learn more about Spare a Rose. All right, I already talked a little bit about Dexcom. They are one of the sponsors of this show. And prior to using the Dexcom system, we were checking Benny's blood 6 times a day or more, 8 to 10 times. And those finger sticks were not providing the entire picture. The Dexcom G5 mobile CGM system gives you a reading every 5 minutes so that you can spot trends and get a dynamic picture of your blood glucose levels. It helps us keep up with Benny's diabetes, even though he's hitting the teenage years. Being able to send our information through Dexcom Clarity to our endocrinologist makes appointments a lot more productive as our doctor has more information. Managing diabetes is not easy, but I feel like we have one of the very best CGM systems working for us. For more information, go to Dexcom.com. My guest this week is a very successful author, unique in that she has written for children, young adults, and general fiction, and mystery too. And she has a new series out called Storybook Valley, which she describes as chick-lit, romance, and fairy tale fun. Stacy Juba is also a diabetes mom. Her daughter was diagnosed at the age of 6. And here's my talk with author Stacy Juba. Stacy, thank you for joining me. I'm really excited to talk to you today. This should be fun.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, thank you so much. That is so great to hear. Let's start. And I have all these questions. I'm a big reader, so I have a lot of questions about writing books and your background in a newspaper. But let's start with your family's experience with type 1. You have 2 kids, 2 daughters, and your younger daughter was diagnosed in kindergarten. Tell me what happened.
Yes, she was diagnosed December 27th, 2013, so it was a couple of days after Christmas. That whole fall, she'd been acting kind of differently. She'd been going to the bathroom a lot. Her teacher commented on it at school. I took her in twice for urine tests, and they both came out negative. So they just thought it was anxiety about being in kindergarten and getting used to a full day and everything. In the back of my mind, I was it was in my mind. I even asked them, could it be diabetes? And they said, no, she looks too healthy for that. So, but you would know if she, you would just know if it was something like that. So they thought it was more like anxiety.
What made you go to diabetes? Did you have experience? Did you know somebody with type 1?
My best friend growing up had diabetes, so I was kind of familiar with it. I mean, later I even told her I had no idea of all the things that you were going through. Then I just kind of knew a little bit about the going to the bathroom and the fluctuating blood sugars. And then also as a reporter, I'd been a health reporter, so I had done articles about it. I'd written several articles about it, in fact, and heard people speak on it. It's just. Sometimes I go back and look at the articles, I don't really remember writing them, but I guess it stuck in my mind because I just knew what the symptoms were. So, and then when she started getting thirsty, and then she was having mood swings, I just kept thinking, I think it's diabetes. So I hoped I was wrong, but I brought her to the doctor just when she was really complaining about being thirsty and everything, and she was going to the bathroom 10 times, in 2 hours. So, and then even that day, they said, we think she'd been recovering from a cold. Even then, they said it's probably just, they just didn't think it was that. But then when we got home, we had just walked in the door, and they called back and said there was sugar in the urine, so it was diabetes. So then we had to go right back and do a finger stick and go to the hospital and everything.
Isn't it amazing, though, that you come in a few times with classic symptoms and they don't just do a finger stick there?
Exactly. So, and that's why I try to raise awareness because, if I had known I thought, even though I was familiar with the symptoms, I kind of thought that you had to get a fancy blood test,
Yeah.
It didn't occur to me to just go to the store and get a finger pricker and test her myself because I didn't really know what a high or low level was. I just had this vague sense of what the symptoms were, but I didn't know that I could be proactive myself and just go prick her finger myself and look up what the, what normal blood sugar is and what a high one is.
Yeah, well, but
you just trust your doctor to do
that's
that.
What I meant, right? So, I meant, why doesn't the doctor just do it? You come in classic type 1 signs, because we hear this story all the time now. Classic, right. And I get it that there's insurance and they have to file and there's numbers and coding and everything else, but just, keep a meter in your desk, doctors, and do what you gotta do. I know.
So it's just, that's the thing. We were there several times and even called. And even when I called that weekend, they were Friday, and they said, okay, we can come in Monday. And I was I don't know if I should come in Monday. Can I just come in today? And
right.
Then I just don't know why that isn't more on their mind. So.
How did your daughter do? I mean, that's a scary thing to find out when you are getting used to full day kindergarten. It is a big change. It
was, and it was just that whole weekend was just this. Luckily, she wasn't in DKA, so that was good. She was about 650. Her blood sugar was about 650 when we were there, and they kept commenting how we'd caught it so early. Usually. It felt to me
yeah, you're hey, you could have caught it even earlier.
But, I don't know, but they said usually kids come in a lot worse off. Yeah. So she was in the ICU, but it was just to get her started on insulin. It wasn't because she was in DKA. So we were very fortunate in that respect. But it was very, it was scary for her. Luckily, they had a kids area with games and things like that, and we tried to be positive. But when we got home, I think that's when it really hit all of us because we had to take care of it ourselves. So, I know I had a few meltdowns where, when she was low, she had a tendency to go in the bathroom and just close the door and try to lock herself in. And so we actually had to take the locks off the bathroom doors. So it was just, she just, it was scary for her. So she just didn't really even know what to, I don't know if she didn't feel well with these fluctuating levels, or it was just, or she didn't really understand fully what it meant. She just knew it was like a disease that she had, and she was kind of understanding it wasn't going to go away. So it was a challenge, and it got better when we got much better when we got the Dexcom.
And how long after diagnosis was that?
About 3 months.
Oh, quick.
I heard about it just on some diabetes Facebook groups, and just from our doctors didn't tell us about it. We actually wound up switching. It took us like 3 tries to get to to Jocelyn, where we go now. So we love them. But so nobody mentioned it to us. I just kind of heard about it on different parent Facebook groups, and it was like a miracle. It really was like a miracle, and that's when things started getting better.
What's funny about, I wrote down your daughter's diagnosis date of 12/27/2013. We started using the Dexcom 12/25/2013 on Christmas Day.
Oh, really?
Yeah, 2 days before that, your diagnosis. That's funny. Yeah, we're Jewish, so we were sitting around on Christmas Day. What are we going to do today? We go to the movies and whatever. But that's we started the pump July 4th weekend, so we thought it would be funny to start the Dexcom on Christmas Day. I don't think my son cares about any of that, but we think it's kind of funny. Yeah, so wow, that's really soon, because this was for us 7 years after diagnosis. So we went a really long time without the Dexcom, which did change things for us. But I have a very different perspective, because it didn't change. It didn't change how can I say this? I have a different perspective because I went without it for so long. I love having it. It has changed our management. I love seeing the trends, but I didn't do it so quickly. I can't imagine so quickly after diagnosis seeing all that information. Was it helpful or was it overwhelming?
It was actually really helpful, because I felt completely overwhelmed without the information. I was always really worried about lows, especially at night and when she was at school. So it was just, I felt like I was just hyper alert, where I couldn't even, that was all I was thinking about. So it felt like when we got it, it was like a plane, like, at first we had no radar, and then we got this, and it was like, okay, I can handle this now. I know about where we're at. I have a baseline where we're at. I know whether it's going up or down. And it just really helped us all. It even helped her, because I think she felt like she had more control over it, because she was very attentive to the arrows, and it really quickly got it. Even though she was only 6, she really quickly understood what, like, a 2 arrow straight up or straight down, or 1 arrow or slanty up or slanty down.
Yeah, the kids
get it. Yeah, so it's just really, I think it just gave us all a sense of control. Like, and then we got on the pump in June, and that was, even though it was a big learning curve, I was reading lots of books about pumping and everything. We just weren't getting good management with shots. I mean, they said we would have had to dilute the insulin and things like that, and it just wasn't working well for her. She was always going really high. So the pump was a big game changer for us also.
That's great. That's great. I'm just curious, you had to dilute insulin. She was 6 years old. I never had, my son is a big guy, so we never really had that issue, even as a toddler. But did you find that you needed, like, the micro dosing?
Yeah, and it was really tricky, because trying to, on the syringes, trying to do like half units or like quarter units.
Yeah, we tried. That's true. We did do quarter units for a long time.
And it was just really hard. I mean, just trying to do that myself, trying to see, I wear like glasses. It's like I take them on and off. It was really hard to see. It just didn't seem to work well.
What pump did you wind up with?
The Animus One Touch Ping.
Well, we use that too, as you know. That's great. I was curious. Your daughter is in kindergarten when she's diagnosed, and she is she's 9 now. She's in 3rd grade. How is she doing?
She's doing good. I mean, we had like the best A1C we've had, because I've been doing a lot of that sugar surfing. So I think that the Dexcom's really helped with her A1C, and she has. It's always amazing to me that she can have a good A1C, but still have these highs and lows. I mean, she still has these times where she goes to 390 or.
Oh yeah.
But I guess we're all a lot more attentive to it now on how to try to fix it. And she gets frustrated with it. She gets frustrated like there's been like birthday parties where for whatever reason, she got to be 400 and then the kids are still eating more food. And I'm like, it's just not a good time for you to keep eating and, you can take it home. So that's when it really frustrates her, when her friends are able to eat something and her blood sugar is too high. I mean, I let her have cake and all those kinds of things, but I mean, if she's 400,
yeah, no, I get it. There are limits.
You know?
There are limits. But how's she doing overall? Is she does she play sports? Does she do art? Is she interested in stuff? How's she doing other than diabetes, I guess, or with diabetes?
Yeah, she's doing really well. She's been doing karate.
Cool.
So there's always a little apprehension when she does a new activity, like what if I get low, or what if we always try to explain to people and just have them set her at ease. It's okay if you just feel free to go over and sit down and check yourself out and then come back when you're ready. So that's fine. And so she's doing really well with karate. She loves to write and read. She's very active. The one thing, she'll be doing gymnastics in the house. She'll be doing cartwheels, and I'll look at her Dexcom. I'm like, okay, you're like 85 going down. Can we just stop the cartwheel for a while? But she pricks her finger. She gives herself insulin at school. So there's just the normal frustrations with that at times, but overall, I don't feel like it rules her life. She does normal activities, and it's just something she knows she has to live with, and sometimes she gets frustrated with it, and other times it's just part of her life. So.
Well, you mentioned she likes to read, she likes to write. I wonder where she gets that from. Can we talk about you a little bit? Because this is really interesting. I mean, you've been writing your whole professional career. You mentioned you were a journalist and you had health reporting experience, but you are, you're not only an author, you teach other authors, right?
Right. I also do some online marketing classes for authors, like teaching them how to blog and promote their books and manage their time. Well, that was one thing.
Yeah. Well, tell me about some of your books, because you write, and I'm trying to see what to ask you about, because you have such variety, because you write for young adults, you write for adults, and you write for kids. Most authors, I think, really focus on one thing. How do you well, here's a really crazy question. I mean, how do you find your voice in all those different audiences? Does it just come naturally to you, or do you really just get a story in your head that you feel is appropriate for that audience?
Yeah, I mean, it's like right now I'm focusing on my Storybook Valley chick-lit romantic comedy series, so that's where I see my writing going in the future. Like the first book was Fooling Around with Cinderella.
Yeah, and I want to talk specifically about that. Yeah. So hold that thought for a second.
Yeah, so that's where I'm going in the future with different books in that series. But I started out writing mysteries because that's where I loved reading mysteries as a kid, and that's what I wrote as a kid, and I just that was like a natural transition. Was writing the mystery novels. But when I was in high school, actually, I should backtrack a little bit. When I was in high school, I wrote my first book, Face Off, and I entered that in a contest with Avon Books, which is now HarperCollins, and won the contest. It was a contest for teen writers. So that was actually published when I was a freshman in college.
Wow.
And that's like about two brothers who don't get along, and they play on the same hockey team, and they both wind up being captain, which doesn't go so well. And I just wrote that because I loved hockey at the time, and I couldn't find any fiction books to read about it. I was a big reader, so I decided to write my own. And then that publication experience just really made me decide, that I do want to keep writing books. But there was a lot of rejection after that. I mean, it wasn't easy or anything. At that time, I was competing with teenage authors. And even though the book did really well, I had a lot of editing, so I really worked closely with an editor. But then when I was back on my own writing new books, it was just a lot of rejection. So in that time, I wrote mysteries, and then I wrote my young adult book, Dark Before Dawn. And then the children's books was actually, I never really intended to write that. I initially, there was a time, I guess going back to the diabetes and autoimmune, I'm hypothyroid, and my daughter's hypothyroid. And at the time, I was undiagnosed hypothyroid, so I just didn't have couldn't, whenever I wanted to write, I just couldn't sit down and write a novel. I was having a lot of brain fog, and things like that. And it took me a while to get regulated on the medication. So, in that time, I wanted to write something, but I just could not focus on a 250-page novel. So I wrote my children's book, The Flag Keeper, which is like a picture book. And it was more, at the time, it was a short story. I was just planning to submit it to magazines that publish children's stories. And I don't want to say it was easy to write, because writing a children's picture book is actually very, very difficult.
Right.
I don't feel it was fun to write, and I learned a lot, but I don't think that's I'm more comfortable writing novels. But I mean, it was a great experience, and it's done well and everything. That's not my niche, I think, for future books. But and then my father likes to draw. And so as the kids got older, I had written a couple more stories during this time when I couldn't focus on a novel. And I said, hey, do you want to illustrate them for the kids? And he just did such cute illustrations that for the Flag Keeper book, I contacted the VFW, the National VFW, and the National American Legion, because the book's about flag etiquette and how to treat the flag with respect. And I just kind of said, hey, what do you think of this? Would you endorse a book like this? And they both gave me really wonderful endorsements, because it was a really unique book.
Yeah.
Most books about flags are about like Betsy Ross and the history of it, and this is just focusing on how to treat it with respect. So I decided, eventually I decided to just publish it, since now I had this website and I had adult readers. So I just figured I could kind of market it toward them as, if you're looking for a book for your kids or your grandkids, these are some kids' books I wrote. So that was just kind of like a little side venture I did. But so basically, I just kind of write what comes into my head and what makes me excited at the moment. And right now, it's my Storybook Valley series.
The Flag Keeper, it says on your website, is available for fundraisers for Boy Scout troops and military families and elementary schools like that. Is that still available in that way?
Yeah, so I mean, people could just buy it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, and it's available as paperback, an ebook. It's in a children's ebook bundle, and it's also the children's ebook bundle that is in the Teddy Bear Town Children's Bundle actually is an audiobook also. So there's different ways you can get it, but I also have like some coupon codes on my website, or if people contact me if they wanted to buy bulk copies, like for their troop, or if they wanted to do a fundraiser, and I could give them like a discount on it so that they could charge the retail price, but they don't have to pay me the retail price. They can pay me a little less, and then they could use the remainder of the money to kind of go toward their fundraiser.
Wow, I'll put that on the website, because that is great. I haven't seen a children's book about flag etiquette and how important to teach kids about that. I love it. Well, and thanks for offering that. I'll make sure to link that up. Okay, so let's talk about Storybook Valley. The first book is called Fooling Around with Cinderella. And this is such a great idea about, theme park, but it's not Disney World, but theme park and romance and, strong characters. How did you get the idea for this?
I got the idea when we were at a children's theme park where they had a Cinderella, and I think I had Princesses on the Brink, as a couple of weeks earlier we had gone to like a cruise where there were Disney princesses on it, like a lunch cruise. So, and then we'd just gone to see Cinderella, and we're walking back from the castle, and just like this idea just popped into my head. It was like, what if there was like a reluctant Cinderella who didn't really want to be the theme park Cinderella, and what if she fell for her boss? And I just stopped short, and my husband's like, you got that like look you get in your eyes. is that, you have an idea for a story or something? And I said, yeah. And then I remember being up all night, like at 4 a.m. I was writing on like little scraps of paper, how like the hotel gives you like these tiny little notepads. I'm like writing on the back, because I just had like this, it just came to me, this whole idea. And it was really fun to write, but I was about halfway through it when my daughter was diagnosed, and then I just could not pick it up again for months, because it was just, here was this like happy, sparkling, romantic comedy, and I just couldn't get myself into that mindset. But after we got the Dexcom, after we got the insulin pump, and after we found the right doctor and nurse, and I kind of felt like we were in more of a maintenance phase instead of this constantly trying to get things right and this constant fight or flight mode, then I was able to get back into it. So the book's really special to me because I feel like that signaled that we could have a normal life with diabetes, and I want to show her that, even though I'm taking care of you and this is a big thing, and I have other interests, I can, it doesn't have to be your life. It's just one part of it, and now we have it under control. So, so it was really exciting for me to be able to sit down and finish it, because that just kind of signaled to me that I finally accepted it and was at a good place with the diabetes.
I can see that, because it would be easy to say, that was my life before, I'm not going to go back to that, because things do change so much. But to go back to it and say, we're going to do this and we're going to be okay, and to finish it must have been such a great feeling of accomplishment. Do you remember when you finished it? I know there's lots of editing probably that goes into these books, but do you remember when you wrote the last words, what that was like for you?
I remember, it was amazing, because I had actually hired an editor when I was about 3/4 through. I just kind of wanted to get another opinion on whether I was on the right track. So I wound up doing a lot of rewriting, because this was my first venture into chick lit. So after writing mysteries, so I just kind of wanted to get another opinion on it. So it was quite a bit of rewriting. And then when I finally wrote the last word, which I think was in the fall of it was probably like late summer of 2015. It was just amazing. I finally wrote the shoe scene. Of course, it's a Cinderella book. There has to be like a shoe scene. So when I finally wrote that and wrote the end, I was like, oh my God, I finally did the shoe scene. It's done. And I didn't think I was ever going to get to that shoe scene.
That's great. Oh, that's great. Of course, as a reader, I have to ask you, what's next? There are more books coming in this series?
Yes, I'm about 3/4 through the second book in the series, called Prancing Around with Sleeping Beauty, and that's about each book in the series. It takes place at a theme park called Storybook Valley, but each book has like a different romantic leads. So my characters Jane and Dylan from the first book will be in the second book, but just as supporting characters. So in the second book, Dylan's sister Rory takes center stage. So it's about her. Her name is Aurora, so that's the Sleeping Beauty.
Got it.
It's a very quirky series where the family's very theme park crazy, and everybody's named after characters and things like that. So it's a lot of fun.
That's great
to write.
We used to go to a place called Story Town up in the Northeast. Is that anywhere near where you live? You're in Massachusetts, right?
Yeah, so we go to Storyland in New Hampshire, but a reader actually wrote to me and said that it reminded her of Storytown, and when she used to go there. So that's what I'm kind of basing it on, those smaller, not like a big Disney, but those smaller kind of family-owned independent theme parks.
Those are so fun.
Here. Yeah, so.
That's great. Yeah, we had Storytown that we traveled. I can't even remember where it was. It was probably in upstate New York. But I grew up near New York City, and we used to go to Rye Playland, which was closer, probably where would that be? In Rye. It would be in Rye, in Westchester County. I'm a genius. But it's funny when you think about those small town parks. And I don't even know if those places are still around throughout the country. It's fun to think about. What a neat background for that kind of story. That's really cool. Now, I know your girls are younger. Do they read any of your books other than the children's books?
No, they read the children's books, and my older daughter read Face Off, but I haven't been able to get her to read my young adult book, Dark Before Dawn. She's not as big a reader as I am, so I keep telling her, you gotta read it, because it's about teen psychics, and it's a fun book. I think she thinks it's scary, but it's not scary.
When you look back at Fooling Around with Cinderella, as you said, you finished that after your daughter's diagnosis. If somebody reads that with a careful eye, will they find any references to challenges like type 1 diabetes? Obviously, it's not a book about diabetes. I wouldn't expect to find that in there. But do you think that a careful reader might pick out some character development that's related?
I know my character Jane. She, since it's like a Cinderella story, she lost her mother several years ago after her mother's battle with cancer. So that's one thing in her mind that's always kind of difficult for her to deal with, and she kind of had to get past that, and then her father got remarried and moved away, and then so she kind of had to find her place in the world, and she had sisters, of course, who always want her to do their errands and things like that. But so I think she did have challenges to overcome, and she just kind of had to find out, who she is in this new reality without her mother, without her father nearby. So in that sense, I think that's what I had to find is, okay, we have a new reality now. Our life has changed. So who am I now? How I want to be a writer and editor and everything, but I also now I'm the mother of a child with a chronic disease, and how can I, find this new new me? So in that sense, that probably was subconsciously in my mind as I was writing it.
Wow. And, we talked earlier about you being a health reporter. I know that when I look back on my stuff, and I was a medical reporter for about 20 years, much of that on TV. I was a TV health reporter for about a decade, and then I worked in radio. I know that I was confused by the different types of diabetes. And I know that every time I did a story, I had to look up the different types. And, it's kind of embarrassing to talk about now and the ignorance that I had, because I didn't know anything. I didn't know anybody with type 1, except for the people that I occasionally interviewed when my son was diagnosed. I'm curious what your experience was. I assume it's probably pretty similar, other than you said your friend had it growing up.
Right, and then my mother-in-law actually has type 2, so I see her doing her blood sugar and doing shots and everything like that, but I didn't really have clear difference about, I just didn't know much about it. I just associated with my friend. I remember her going to visit her in the hospital, and she was injecting into an orange, and I remember a lot over the years. They didn't have Dexcons back then, or things like that, so I don't think, it just didn't seem like she was back then everyone was as aware, as cautious as we are now. I know her mother never really told us when to be careful of low blood sugars or anything like that. I don't know. So I had a more casual, I knew it was an annoyance for her, and sometimes she didn't feel good because of the lows, but I didn't know about ketones and all of these things. I really had no clue how much your daily life revolves around it. Maybe back then they didn't do carb counting. I'm not sure so it's just right now, we're weighing things, everything she eats I'm weighing, and have all the carbs written down for all the restaurants. So it's just it's such a big thing. I didn't know that, and I didn't really know much about the difference between type 1 and type 2. And sometimes it's frustrating now when people say, oh, is she gonna, if she eats less sugar, or will it, they don't know the difference either, and it can be frustrating. Like, no, are they associating it with like their grandmother's type diabetes, how she's on a pill, and will she ever be able to just be on a pill and not take insulin? So it can be frustrating when people don't understand it, but then I have to remember, well, I didn't understand it either. It's just something, if you're not living with it, I just don't think you get it.
Yeah, it's definitely different when you're a parent. You look at things so differently. And you had mentioned when we talked offline about you got a copy of that book, and I have this book too. It's a great book called Taking Diabetes to School, but you got that before your daughter was diagnosed, right?
Yeah, so it was very odd. Like when I was a health reporter, just people would, different companies and organizations would just send us things to have us do an article. So I don't know who sent it, whether it was JDRF but it was for an article on diabetes, and so they sent a free copy of the book. And I think I did write an article. I don't remember much about it, but I did write some kind of article, and I knew if I just left it in the newsroom, it would get thrown out. So I said, well, I guess I'll just keep it in case they ever need it. But I was thinking more along the lines like, I didn't have kids then either, so I just, I'm a writer. I love books. I can't just throw out a book,
I totally understand it. I had a stack of books when I left the radio station, and I had to give them away, or they were useless to me. I mean, who knows? Maybe I should have held on to it. But they seemed like I would never use them again. But how do you throw out a book? I get it.
Right, yeah, it was such a cute cover and everything, so I said, all right, I'll keep it. And I was thinking more along the lines of, if I have kids someday, maybe one of their grandparents would get diabetes, and it would help them understand it. And again, I didn't know the difference between type 1 and type 2, so I just thought, just general, it would help them understand diabetes. But the book's actually about type 1. So I kept it, and then I had kids, and I found it when I was actually when I was moving my older one into another room because we were going to have the baby. So it was just in the closet in the nursery, and I was kind of going through things, and I looked at it, and now that I had kids, I was like, oh, this is kind of, I don't know, it almost seems like bad luck to keep it. So I didn't keep it in the room, but then again, I was like, should I just donate it to the library or something? And then I wound up just putting it in the attic in a box of other books. I don't know, for some reason I held on to it. But I remember having this feeling like, oh, I don't want to keep it in here. That's almost like bad luck. And then when she did get diagnosed, after we were home for a few days, it just popped into my head that I had this book. And I took it. I went and I found it, and I was kind of staring at it, and then I almost took out all my anger on this book. Like, I was like, oh, this was bad luck. And I had scissors in my hand. I was almost going to just cut it up, take out all my frustration on this book, but then something held me back, and I said she might need this for school. And then eventually the school nurse did wind up reading that book to her class, and I was grateful we had it. It was just sort of a strange thing that I had this book, and I in my head, how you're not thinking that logically in a stressful time, I was like, I should have just thrown it out. I shouldn't have kept it.
I totally understand.
But in the end, it was really helpful. It really helped her classmates to understand about it, and I was really grateful that the nurse took the time to read it. I updated it a little. I added some things about insulin pumps and CGMs because it didn't really have anything about that.
Yeah, it's an older book. But it's still a great message.
Yeah. It is. It's definitely a good thing to read to a class if you're trying to get your child's friends and classmates just to kind of have a more basic understanding of it. So
I'm going to include in this episode probably some of my diabetes kid book recommendations, because it's just like a neat little topic. I'm curious, do you have any other diabetes books, kid books, that you and your daughters have found helpful?
I remember there was a workbook we've gotten on Amazon. I don't remember the name of it, and it was kind of older, but if you do a search for like a diabetes workbook, it would probably come up. But that was really helpful in the beginning because you'd read some pages, and then there were questions you could answer, and so she just kind of, it helped her learn, and she just kind of felt like she was learning a lot. It was kind of like almost like I was giving her a little class in diabetes. And again, it didn't have much about the pumps. I don't think it had anything about CGM, so we kind of like added that ourselves. But I remember that being very helpful because it just gave her a really good education on it. And it was a workbook geared toward kids. So I can look for that actually. I can email it.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, send me an email if you get the name of it. Because we had my son was so young that we read a lot of any book I could find. Because I used to go to his preschool classes and explain it, and then kindergarten. I think I did every year until about 3rd or 4th grade. And it was always helpful to have a book or leave a book in the classroom for other kids to take home. We almost always donated one of the books. And we liked, there's a book called Jackie's Got Game, which is all about a little boy trying out for a basketball team and who has type 1 diabetes, and he has a low, during the tryouts, and he wants to try to hide it, but then he realizes he has to treat it, and amazingly he makes the team anyway. It was a great story. But the funniest part about Jackie's Got Game is that my son's name is Benny, and we didn't know this the first time we were reading it, and they do the team roster, who made the team, and it's Johnny and Jack and Benny, and oh my gosh, so it was just so funny because it's not a really common name. I mean, Benjamin is, but
and then there were the Lily books, the Disney ones. We had gotten those from our doctor, so those were good. And then even the Dexcom website had some little books and coloring pages. I remember printing all those out.
I wanted to ask you, if you don't mind, you mentioned that you and your daughter have hypothyroidism. Can you talk a little bit about that? Is it your daughter who has type 1 has that as well?
Yes. Yeah, she was diagnosed with that like a couple weeks after she was diagnosed with type 1. They were testing for it. And I was diagnosed with it. I how like with pregnancy you can get like a temporary hypothyroidism. I developed mine after my first pregnancy, but it never went away. So usually it goes away, but I didn't actually know it at the time that I had it. So it just for the first, it went on probably a year and a half, where I just thought I was tired because I had like a baby. I remember just being so tired, like when I was trying to read to her at night, I couldn't hold up the book, or I couldn't if I had to give her a bottle, my husband had to hold it. She would only take it from me. She wouldn't take it from my husband. But he had to actually help me hold up the bottle because I was just so tired. I couldn't. And I just thought, oh gosh, everybody must feel this way, when you're up at night with feedings and the baby waking up at night. But it was just getting to the point where I was like in this brain fog and just had to lay down in the middle of the floor because I just couldn't think. So then finally I went on medication for it. So I was on the medication when I was pregnant with my daughter that has diabetes now. And then I have a lot of relatives like aunts and my grandmother. My mom was recently diagnosed with hypothyroidism, so a lot of female relatives, and even my male cousin who's in his 50s, he was recently diagnosed with it also. So we don't have any type 1 in our family, but we have a lot of hypothyroidism, which I guess is the autoimmune. Maybe that's our autoimmune link to diabetes. I don't know.
And forgive my ignorance, is the treatment medication generally?
Yes, it's just taking a pill. So we take a levothyroxine. So my daughter and I, strangely enough, we're actually on the same exact dose of levothyroxine. So we just take it in the morning. You take it about a half hour before you eat. And I haven't really seen any symptoms from her now that she's on the medication. And usually now once you're on the medication, it's pretty stable. But there was one instance where they were just having me check it once a year. I go to an endocrinologist also just for that. And during that time, I went hyperthyroid, where the dose became too much for me, and I was having all these other symptoms that I didn't associate with the thyroid. I associated the fatigue and the brain fog, but I was having symptoms like really bad stomach aches and just kind of almost feeling like I'd had speed, I was like hyper and I just fast heart rate and everything, but it was mostly the stomach aches, and I didn't realize that was my thyroid, and finally I was checked for it, and they had to reduce my dose. So now I get checked twice a year, just so I don't want to wait a whole year in case something, because once in a while that can happen where it becomes too low or too high, and so the symptoms, when you have the symptoms, they can be bad, but if you're on top of it and just getting checked a couple times a year, then they should catch it before it gets too high or too low. And she gets checked twice a year also, so she hasn't really had any symptoms from it.
Good. And I'll link up more information at diabetes-connections.com, because I know I'll get questions about it, and I just think that it's so important to know, just like knowing that you have type 1. I mean, so many of us, as you said, just think we're tired, or have other symptoms, and you just say, oh, that's just part of life. But, if there's really something going on, it's definitely worth getting checked out. I'm sure you have a lot of friends like I do who say, how thirsty was your daughter? Because my child seems really thirsty, and they're drinking 3 cups of water a day or whatever. You're like, no, it's okay.
Yeah, I've had people say to me, oh, whenever my daughter has chocolate, she gets so thirsty, she'll drink all this. Is that related? I'm like, well, it's more than when you're just having chocolate. It's like all the time. So it's like guzzling a whole thing of water.
You know when it happens. I've got my questions out that I wanted. Is there anything else that you wanted to add or make sure to speak about before I close it up here?
So on my website, stacyjuba.com, I have information about my books, of course, but I also, on my blog, from time to time, I'll blog about diabetes related issues. I'm going to link up your blog and your website. I'm going to link up separately, like for diabetes writing, go here, for book stuff, go here. It's the same website, but I'll link it up as the separate pages for sure. Yeah, so I just like to try to get the word out to educate people about diabetes. And then for those who are just doing like a search online because a child was recently diagnosed, I have some articles about like my top resources and the scale I use and things like that. So I have a couple more posts in the works now. So I just try to do that every couple of months just to kind of help get the word out and maybe be of help to somebody who's and I'm interested in reviewing products also. If there's anybody that has like a book that or featuring an author of a book, of a children's book in a couple of weeks, and so if anybody has something like that that's geared toward families and they want to get the word out about it, they can feel free to email me. Or if any parents just have a question about, or just hear this and they just need to talk to somebody about resources, they can feel free to email me through my website. I'm always happy to try to help because so many people help me, which I don't know what I would have done without all that support. So I try to give it back when I can.
Yeah. It is amazing how much, as soon as you find out you have type 1 in the family, you realize you're part of a much bigger family. I mean, this community is amazingly supportive. It's been such a big help to me and my family. Hey, before I let you go, Stacy, I have to say thank you publicly because, and I'll link this up as well, you posted a list not too long ago about great resources in the diabetes community, and you put this podcast on there, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Oh, definitely. I'm always taking my iPod with me and listening to it in my car on my way to do errands and everything. It's great. I love the variety of interviews you've done, and it's just a really great resource. So I hope that it helped other people to find you.
It did. It definitely did. Thank you so much. And I look forward to checking more about your work and reading Fooling Around with Cinderella and the other books as well. So thank you so much for joining me and spending some time today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
You're listening to Diabetes Connections with Stacy Sims.
Stacy has generously offered a free storybook welcome kit. So I'll link up all the info at diabetes-connections.com. You can read a sample and learn more about the books. And I really appreciate her coming on and talking to me. It was fun to see all the things we had in common, being health reporters. And I love her story of getting that book and then putting it away and then being so angry at the book. I can totally relate to that. In my community connection this week, I saw a mention of Noah's March on Twitter in December. And I thought, this is crazy. A 10-year-old walking across the country. Well, it turns out his family thinks it's kind of wacky too, but they are committed. It is their way to raise money and get attention for type 1. In this interview, I speak to the whole Barnes family, Joanne Barnes, then 10-year-old Noah, and then Dad Robert. So here we go, starting with Joanne. Let's start before the march, if we could. Tell me about when Noah was diagnosed with type 1. How old was he?
He was 16 months old, just a baby. He, I remember it. He was my firstborn. He was walking. He was babbling. He was catching balls, throwing balls. He was just a very lively little toddler. And then he got sick, and he had been misdiagnosed at his pediatrician. They thought it was just a cold with a stomach virus, but it was not that. He just wasn't getting any better. And it reached a point where his breathing had become labored. And quite honestly, I didn't know any diabetics. So I didn't know what I was looking for. I also thought this was a cold that was very stubborn. He just wasn't getting over it. But with that labored breathing, it got me a bit worried, and we took him into the ER, and they admitted him immediately. And me just being a naive person, I thought, wow, you must not be very busy, because they just ushered him right to the back. And they did a quick blood test, and the attending physician said, yep, it's diabetes. And I think my heart hit the floor, and I was in absolute shock. But at the same time, here's my little guy, still with a lot of fight in him, as they had to pin him down to get an IV into him. And once he finally gave up, he got some rest. They got him fluids, and he was in the intensive care unit for a week.
Wow. While
they were getting him back to normal, and then getting Mother back to normal too. Because it was a shock, absolute shock.
Well, it sounds like the doctor, when you describe it that way, the doctor says, yep, it was diabetes, as though, well, the doctor probably had his suspicions, but it doesn't sound like you did. I mean, it must have been such a steep learning curve.
It was a steep learning curve. Like I said, I didn't know anyone with diabetes.
Yeah.
So this was a whole life shift. And it wasn't even the doctor. I think it was the nurse who was admitting him. She looked at him, and when she said, right this way, it's almost suspicious that they all knew. They recognized it. So, hats off to the ER people at that particular time. They got him in right away, and we got him stable, and then Robert and I had to learn a whole new way of dealing with our new baby.
Yeah. I don't know if you know, my son was diagnosed at 23 months and he's now 12.
Okay.
So a little bit older. And that makes a big difference at that age. I mean, to be honest with you, it really is amazing for, at any age, but especially when you're already intensively taking care of somebody as you do a baby, and then to throw this on top of it, it's pretty crazy
it's your
stuff.
first too. I mean, you're always so concerned about the germs, and then the second child comes along, you're a little less concerned about the germs and so forth. So I think always as a new parent, you're overly protective, and now you've got a whole new dynamic to throw into there, and you're extra cautious with everything.
That's a good point, because Benny is my type 1 is my second kid, so we already didn't care that much about him. So it was easy. No, I'm just kidding. Obviously, different set of circumstances.
No, I know. We love all of our children. It's
That's
just,
great.
I think we get a little bit more relaxed because we've been there and done that.
So over the years, I assume you guys have taken part in, walks or fundraising or just awareness campaigns. I mean, he's 10 years old now. How did you all come about to create Noah's March? And I'm going to ask him about that as well, but I'd love to hear you explain it.
Well, it's I see it as more involved. I think Robert, his story is much more brief, but and really we had kept his diabetes very private. It was just a private matter between us. It was something that we just took care of, and we never made a big deal about it because we didn't want him to go around thinking that he was special. He's just like everyone else. He just has a condition that we have to handle. So Noah's March came about because he got up one day and he decided he didn't want to be a diabetic anymore, and he asked us how he could quit. And we didn't really have a very good answer for that. So after some research on his part and Robert's part, they saw that there has been some very positive things happening. So Noah was kind of excited, and he said, well, how does this happen? And as grown-ups, we think, well, it's only money. They need money. So he thought, well, how much money? And he's looking at us like, well, you guys have money. We don't quite have that much money, son, but we'll do what we can do. And then as a family, we had been going through this whole thing of watching documentaries at night rather than watching movies and garbage on TV. And we had seen this documentary on Terry Fox. And I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he was an 18-year-old cancer survivor. I thought it was 18, 20. I keep on getting corrected over here. But he wanted to raise money for cancer research because he had lost his leg. They cut his leg off right at the hip. And he decided that he would run across Canada to bring awareness and raise money for cancer research. He didn't finish his journey because the cancer came back and it took him. And this was back in the early 80s. Now, I remember it. I was born in Canada. I remember him as a little girl. So he's a Canadian treasure. And my husband was asking me, do you know of this guy? Oh, yes, I remember him. Well, Noah's watching this with great intent. And he thought, well, he's set to run across Canada. Canada is almost as wide as the United States. Maybe I could do something like that. I have both of my legs. Oh, I about bald right there. Like, what are you thinking? And it evolved from there. He wanted to go do something. So he's just been an incredible little boy. He came up with a map and he showed it to Robert, and we just after a few weeks, basically, we finally took it serious. And we said, okay, I think this is something we can do, all of us. But Robert, Noah's been a trooper. I tell you what, I'll put Robert on the phone with you, and he'll tell you about the journey so far through the Keys.
I want to talk to him in just a second. Yeah, I want to talk to him in just a second, but I need to talk to you about a couple of quick things first. And
Sure.
The first is, you all homeschool, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, but homeschooling at home is a lot different than packing your family up in, I presume, an RV and making your way from Florida to Seattle while you're walking every day. I mean, did you really just jump in and do this? Didn't a little voice, that mom voice in your head say, this is crazy?
This is nuts. Well, sure, but at the same time, I looked at it as an adventure that we wouldn't have otherwise been able to do unless we homeschooled.
Yeah.
And so much of what we're going to be doing this year, and so much of part of homeschooling, is life experience that you're not going to get in a classroom. So there's so much we can do from the road. Actually, it's almost really freeing. It's like taking a year-long field trip. There's going to be so much hands-on learning plus life experience. So really, the seat work, as I call it, the math, doing some language art, journaling, your reading, that will have to be regimented, of course. But so many other things we can do. Talking history, geography, geology, the weather, culture. There's so many things we can do while we walk.
Yeah. How's it gone so far? You just started, right? I mean, how were those first couple of days?
Stressful.
Why? What happened?
It's more. I think about the traffic, having to walk alongside the road. When they did 7 Mile Bridge, I think I fretted for about 3 hours. It just knowing that they're out in the heat, making sure that they're getting enough water. That's a little stressful, and I think it's just the mom stress. You just want your kids, your husband, to be safe.
Joanne passed the phone to Noah, and we had a quick conversation about how this all happened. Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm doing really well. So I'm like your mom. I have a son with type 1, and I have some dumb questions for you. Is that okay?
Okay.
All right. So how do you manage your diabetes? Do you do shots? Do you use a pump?
Yes, shots. Constant shots.
Yeah, I saw a video of you getting a lot of shots. That doesn't look very fun.
It does not.
Do you do your shots yourself, or do your mom or dad mostly help you with them, or do you both ways?
Mom and Dad help me with them. I still don't know how to operate them.
So I got that you are going to walk from Florida to Seattle over the next year. Was that your idea? How'd you come up with it?
I came up with it because I watched the Terry Fox documentary, and he had one leg and he was going across Canada. I have 2 legs and I'm going across America.
Are you worried about getting tired? Like, have you trained?
Every 17 miles, I get tired.
That's a pretty long distance, though.
Not really. Not really.
Really? You do that okay? You're okay to walk that far?
Yep. I do it every day.
What do you think about when you're walking?
Tech. How does tech work? Science. There's some stuff I don't even know. Like science, we don't really dive into.
So you're just kind of walking along, thinking about science. When you started out walking this year, did anybody talk to you? Or you're just walking along with your dad? Or did cars honk? Like, what happened?
Cars honked. I talked with my dad. So, I've been on the radio 3 times already, so it spread the word multiple times.
How do you think you're going to feel when you get to the end of this?
Tired.
Yeah, I will bet that he will be tired. And I like how he's already got the radio thing down. They've been doing some appearances as they start out in Florida. And then I spoke to Noah's dad, Robert, about the fundraising aspect and how he is keeping up with his 10-year-old through all this. Why are you doing this? This is a huge project for an adult to do, let alone with a 10-year-old. What's the idea here?
So when we first started looking at groups that were advocating for diabetes and doing research and trying to connect with some of these groups, a lot of these groups are basically companies now. They've kind of lost their way and they're not really tied in with communities. And so the frustration point for me, coming from a business background, is they're just not effective. There needs to be a major shift or disruption in how these GARD is kind of doing things. And it was very frustrating for me on how they were dealing with the community itself. So it's got to be somebody's fight. Somebody's got to take this charge. And so my position as an adult as well, if somebody's got to do it, might as well be me. All right, so we have two different groups that we're connected with. The first group is the Diabetes Research Connection. They're out of California, and it's diabetesresearchconnection.org. And what they do is they do $50,000 grants to early career scientists to have their concept to do some sort of scientific laboratory proof of concept. And because a lot of these ideas are so far on the outside of normal traditional research right now, they're not getting any funding from anywhere. So Christina and that whole group is, because most of you are people who have come up with cures, like the guy that came up with the cure for polio and the guy that came up with different cures, came up with the concepts way early in their 20s and early 30s. And so that's their target, is that scientist, to try to bring them in so they can kind of fund a cure. They're a relatively new organization, and on their board, they actually have people who have left JDRF to join their board because they didn't think JDRF was doing enough, and this seemed like something that was going to be a really good concept. So that's one group. They're a smaller group, and they'll get some funding. They don't really have a lot of capacity. If there's a lot of funding shift, they're not able to handle it. So they connected us with the University of Florida Diabetes Institute and Mark Atkinson and his whole group, and how they're doing a variety of different searches, from stem cell to cancer research applications to food to hormones to islets to like all kinds of different research. And they have huge capacity here. And they're really the type 1, from what we could tell, the research we were doing, they were really kind of the leaders in type 1 research in the country. And so they'll be the beneficiary of most of the funding. Yes.
But why the march itself? I mean, as I said, this is not an ordinary event for an adult, let alone a kid.
Right. There's not enough awareness. There's not enough. Everybody is it's funny, everybody's attached to their devices. And just in the first 100 miles, communities are so fragmented, and there's so much distractions, and there's so many different things going on, that unless somebody takes a stand and does something life-changing or life-altering, where somebody can view and see that this is actually going on, this is how you have to get attention for a cause. And so the documentation of this all, and this is, as a 10-year-old, it's enough of a challenge to do it for just a 10-year-old, but now I've got to track his blood sugars, I got to track his calories, I got to track his sleep. It's like tracking a professional athlete doing the Tour de France. And, for me, this is a big enough challenge. When he was first diagnosed 10 years ago, they're like, oh, we're close to a cure, it'll be 10, 12 years. We're no closer now than we were 10 years ago. And for me, it's if I can help progress this, or if I can help funnel a way for funds to get to the right people, to the right places to get a cure, I'm all in. Like, how do I help?
Are you worried, though, about him walking? I mean, he said to me, I do 17 miles. It's no problem. I'm good to go. I have a 12-year-old who probably thinks he can do anything as well. I'm sure as a parent, you're going to do what you need to do to make sure he's safe.
Yeah, it was. So when he first came up with the concept, I was not agreeable. It took him about 6 weeks. And, in that 4-week window when he was really, really serious, I was, okay, well, you're not really good shape. You haven't really been trained for this, so let's see what you got. And so middle of summer, end of July in South Florida, I'm like, all right, kid, let's get the shoes on. Let's see how far you can go. And he put on 16 miles in a one-set run, taking breaks, getting water, getting snacks, but I could barely keep up.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, if you got this heart and you got this determination, and he's actually doing better than I am, I'm struggling keeping up with him. His body recovers much faster than mine does. And he can do it no problem. I'm a little concerned that I might slow him down a little bit because again, I'm not.
You're not 10.
Athlete. Right. I'm not saying I'm not a professional athlete.
He's excited about this. He's ready to go. A really delicate question here, because I was reading in some of the materials that he asked, and correct me if I'm wrong, he had asked, how far do I have to walk to get a cure? What happens when you get to Seattle? And and I wish you great success, and I hope you raise lots and lots of money, but is he under the impression that there is a cure happening at the end of this walk? No, right?
No, he knows. So we've spent, this is our third full day here at the university campus, and he's talked to the researchers about stuff, and one of his first leading questions is, okay, how far from a cure are we? And, well, I don't know, kid, we're working on it. Like Mark Atkinson was like, I've spent my whole life trying to answer that question. Yeah. So it's like he's realistic. He knows that they're working on it, but he's wanting to do his part. And if he can be part of the solution, he's wanting to do whatever he can to be part of that solution.
You're going to be living in a vehicle, whatever that vehicle is, and, making this trek across the country. A little voice in the back of your head still saying this is nuts? Are you totally bought in, or you still think this is kind of crazy?
Oh, no, absolutely. It's certifiably insane. So at this point right now, it's no support vehicle. It's me, Noah, in a stroller, and the goodness and the, just blind faith that we live in a great country and people are going to help. And the first 100 miles has proved that to be really effective. People are really, really engaged. And we're going to, basically go through the country, and we'll, on the faith that this is a good country and people want to do things great. And so that's how we're rolling through. We may not get a support vehicle for 2 months, and me and Noah will basically backpack and Airbnb or hotel or tent or whatever we got to do to get through. Now it's Florida, so it's not like, Appalachian Trail or the Rocky Mountains. But
not yet.
Not yet.
Oh,
exactly.
I guess you're not going to the Appalachian Trail, but you're heading northwest.
Oh no, we're crossing Cumberland Gap between Atlanta and Nashville. We're going to the Appalachian Trail while we're crossing it. So we're going to need a support vehicle, because there's some desolate areas that there's nothing for 100 miles, and trying to carry all that food and water is going to be really challenging at some point.
Wow. Well, keep us posted. We're following each other on Twitter, and I know we can communicate that way. So let me know how it goes. And I'd love to keep in touch and drop a line here and there as you continue Noah's March. That'd be great.
Absolutely.
More information about Noah's March on diabetes-connections.com. I'll keep you posted every now and then on how they're doing, and you can certainly follow them on social media. And I do want to mention, as I've said before on this show, or as you may have guessed, I am a supporter of JDRF. We've raised money. We walk. I was on the local board for a while, and I go to many appearances. I go to many retreats, as I did just this past weekend in Greenville, South Carolina. I don't think JDRF is perfect. No organization is, but I do think that they have done and continue to do great things for people with diabetes. So I obviously don't agree with everything that this family was talking about here, but that's fine. This isn't a show where you're only going to hear what I think. And I hope I can reflect different opinions and different experiences and share them with you. And, if a family wants to raise money for a different organization, and we've certainly talked to lots of groups that are raising money for lots of different diabetes charities, that's fine with me. But let me know what you think. You can always email me, Stacy at diabetes-connections.com. And, hey, we are here to talk about our community. We do not speak in one voice. Very few communities as large as ours do. Okay, so if you're not tired of hearing my voice yet, as I said at the beginning of the show, please go ahead and subscribe on whatever podcast platform you are listening to. Also, continue to share the podcast, and thank you so much to anyone you know who is touched by type 1 diabetes. With my radio background, I don't like talking numbers. You're not supposed to do that, especially if you talk like real numbers, like Nielsen ratings. You can get in a lot of trouble. But I can tell you that January so far has been absolutely incredible, and I really appreciate you getting the word out. The show is growing, and your experiences and the stories that we all share, are going to help more and more people. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. All right, much more to come, including Diabetes Podcast Week. In the next couple of weeks, we're going to be talking about riding on insulin, more about this terrific program. We're going to be talking about looping and open APS. What is that? How can I get one? How does it help? Lots of great stuff on the way in the next couple of weeks here on Diabetes Connections. I'm Stacy Sims, and I'll see you back here next week.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacy Sims Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.